All right, everybody, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and continue on. Last time we talked about informational versus literary nonfiction and all of the characteristics that we can find. Now, when we're talking about literary nonfiction, remember one of those characteristics is that they have story elements, such as characters. And when we're talking about characters in literary nonfiction, we use the same process, we use the same techniques that we did when we were talking about characters in fictional text. So way back here, I know it was a long time ago, but way back here, we talked about major and minor characters. We also had character traits, character theories, and I'm actually going to put a little sticky note on my character traits, because when I'm talking about character traits, the other thing you could do is fold it down. Let me move my. The other thing you could do is move your paper down and fold it like that for character traits. That way you can go back and find it. But when we're talking about characters in literary nonfiction, we use the same character traits that we used when we were talking about them in fictional text. So my table of contents is a little goofed up right now, so I'm going to have to go back and find some whiteout in order to fix it. So I'm not going to show you my table of contents today, but you do need to go right on your table of contents, characters, and real people. Because our literary nonfiction is based on real people, but they have some of those character traits that we used in our fiction. So you need to go ahead and write that in your table of contents. You also need to write it in this next blank page that you have. And we're just going to do one really quick reminder that character theories from fictional text helps us know about real people. All right, and specifically, I'm going to go look at page 23. And on nothing other than my book. So actually this is page 27. So our character traits and characters are on page 22 and page 23. This is where I know to go look in my own notes to remember information about characters and real people. We're going to do a very, very short version of character traits here, and then we're going to talk about them with a book that I'm really excited about called 6 Dots. Now, the first section of character traits are the outside character traits. What can you visibly see about that person or that character? Maybe you can't actually see the character because they are in a book. However, you can think about how the author describes that character to you. And we would include these as physical traits. For example, if you described Miss Rogge, my physical traits, you could say that I have blue eyes, brown hair, and you could also say that I am tall. So I have blue eyes, brown hair, I'm tall. These are all things that you can see about me. The other character traits that you will come across are the ones that are inside. Now, I don't mean like that they have a stomach. I mean their thoughts, their words, and their personality. What are their character traits? Who are they as a person? So I'm going to very briefly walk you through a book called 6 Dots. It is a book about a young man named Louis Braille. And Louis Braille is the man who created Braille for people who are blind. And we're not going to read the whole book because it does take a while. But the first thing I'm going to point out is that the villagers right here are talking about how Louis is too small and that he won't survive. But right here it says, oh, but I did survive. I was a curious child and my eyes studied everything. So the first thing is that he's very small. Sorry, let's move that up here. He's very small. That is a physical trait on the outside. He's small. He's tiny. Another one that we have, the author actually told us directly about the character. It said that the character, Louis, is curious. He was naturally curious. He wanted to know about all kinds of things. Now, as Louis grew up, and while he was actually quite young, he played around with some tools in his father's workshop, and he actually hurt himself and got an infection in his eyes and went blind. So our next character trait that we have right here is that the sun did not come, but I sat by the window training my ears to do what my eyes could not. All right. Oh, it's not. It's focusing. There we are. Okay. So a couple of things we know from this physical trait we know is that he's blind. He cannot see. The second physical trait that we know is that he has really good hearing because he's been training himself to hear. We can also say that for his personality, he does not give up. He didn't go blind and say, oh, I can't do this anymore. He decided that he was going to continue trying to see, and he was going to try and make sure that he did as best as he could. Right here, it talks about how Louis decided to go to a school for the blind in Paris when he was only 10. So that's another character trait. He was a young boy. And while he was there, he learned how to play, how to sew, how to do all kinds of things. And finally, he learned about a secret code using a stylus. But it wasn't useful for the blind children. They couldn't use it very well. And so Louis sat late at night while the others slept. I bent over my slate and punched the pages. I tried hundreds of ways to simplify the captain's code. I worked until my back was stiff and my fingers ached. Often I fell asleep a few minutes before morning. I apologize. That is my dog. Then it says a year passed, then another and another. That's 3 years he worked. That winter I turned 15. I was often sick, but I wouldn't rest. So I'm going to say with his character traits, his personality, he's a hard worker. And eventually, Louis worked so hard and tried so much that he came up with a pattern for them to use so that other students would be able to use the Braille in order to be able to read and write just like sighted children. As always, if you need to, go ahead and hit pause to make sure that you have all of this written down and be ready to discuss character theories in your next class.